at CatalystNeuro, which is a consulting company that develops open source software for neuroscience. And actually, I have to thank Olivier because he really set the stage for Luiz's talks, because the last part was about rerunning in the cloud. And actually, Luiz is going to talk about a new application and framework, which is called DENDRO. And basically, this software is a framework to run spike sorting and neuroscience-related processing in the cloud with a very easy interface for basically users. So let's set Luiz up and let's give him an applause for welcoming him. Come on. I guess more entertaining. Is there more questions for Olivier or any other talks for the day? Now it's the time. No? Maybe I'll a quick comment to Olivier. I think it's going to be critical to include in the CI like some sort of hybrid testing, so we don't actually rely on previous kilo sort runs. Let's assume we find a new sorter that finds a very like different output than the previous kilo sort run, which is like 100 times better. It's just orthogonal. Then we would miss it and say, oh no, this is crap, right? So we need to find better ways to properly test. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I think we're able to.
I think you can move your. Oh, no.
Should I hold this?
Yes. And keep those. Okay, try again. Okay, very good. Mike, button at the top is slided.
Hi, hello. Yep. All right. Thanks for the help setting this up. Okay, yeah, sorry for this delay, guys. Thanks for being present. So far, thanks for the organizers. It has been an amazing day of talks. I'm feeling very inspired to keep working on this now after seeing like so many interesting projects. And yeah, so what I'm gonna present to you today is DENDRO. It's a open source web application that we've been working on for a while now. And that has a main goal of helping neuroscientists run complex processing algorithms in the cloud. My name is Luiz Tauffer. Thank you, unless you introduced me better than I would. But I work at CatalystNeuro, developing open source software for neuroscience, for data processing in general. And for DENDRO specifically, I've been collaborating very closely with Jeremy Magland from Flatiron Institute, who is de facto the main developer of this project. Right. So when we look at the current practices in neurodata processing, we quickly identify a few key issues, and it all starts with a lack of data standardization, right? This comes first from a large diversity of electrophysiology data formats coming from different recording systems. And although we've made like very important progress in that front, for example, with spike interface that's able to read basically from everything that matters nowadays, neuroscience experiments are not constrained to electrophysiology, but also behavior, imaging, and other things. So we're still lacking it's still not well used, the standards that we have nowadays. And together with that, we have relevant other details and metadata associated with those experimental sessions, which are usually stored in messy ways, CSV, TXT files, individual lab notes scattered all over, you know what I mean? So this is the first and most important problem. Together with that, there is no easy and obvious way to store those files that you're producing and how to share that with other people. And the main culprit here is because recordings are getting bigger in size. Today we heard about ultra probes, right? So those things are growing exponentially and getting to the order of magnitude of hundreds of gigabytes to terabytes per recording sessions quite soon. Sometimes it already happens. And because of that, general purpose cloud storage solutions like Google Drive, Dropbox, all those typical things are just not good enough for our use case, which is like science. And they get too expensive too quickly. They don't provide features that are important for a community, like discoverability. And they just do not provide a standard way to organize the data in a way that's meaningful for neuroscience experiments. And by that, I mean a schema, a way that you store your data and share it without thinking too much. And when you look at other people's folders, you understand how that thing is organized, a schema. Those things do not provide you with one. Because of those major initial problems, it's not surprised that we lack open source tools for exploration and visualization of remote data where everyone could use. And now looking at the side of the algorithms or the processing tools, they can be many times quite complex to install and to run. If you ever try to run Kilosort, you know what I mean. If you ever try to use the code of a collaborator in your own laptop, you know what I mean, or try to reproduce data with the scripts shared by the authors, you also know what I mean here. And this is especially problematic for non-programmers, which are the majority of the professionals working on neuroscience. Some of these algorithms might require large computational power or specific resources like GPUs, as we've just seen, to run and running for long periods of time. This means that more often than not, your personal laptop will not be good enough to try those algorithms, not even for a test set. And after you collected your data from your specific recording device, you organize all your metadata around it, you manage to share it and put on your own Google Drive folder, and you manage to install Kilosort or whatever other data processing algorithm you're trying to do. And after a little bit of trial and error, you found the ideal set of parameters that yielded you with those beautiful responsive units that you want to publish with. The horror comes when someone is trying to reproduce that. Even yourself, a year from now, it will most likely be very difficult to reproduce those results. So our work at CatalystNeuro has been throughout these years to promote the usage of open source standards, tools, and services that address each one of those points. We are strong advocates for Neurodata Without Borders, or NWB in short, as a data standard for neurophysiology experiments, and for DENDRO archive as the place for storing and sharing NWB files in the cloud, which works as the source for data for the data analysis. NeuroSift is a sibling project to DENDRO that we've been working together as well with Jeremy. That's a tool for analysis and exploration of remote large data sets directly in the browser. No need to install anything locally. And DENDRO, which is the main topic of this talk, aims at addressing those last 3 points. It aims at facilitating running complex algorithms in a no-code environment. It allows for jobs to be executed in a diverse set of computational resources. And finally, it tracks and stores the full provenance of the processing jobs associated with the produced data. I know, at least here in the front row, everybody's familiar with all those tools, but I would like to give you a brief introduction to the first 2 projects. And starting with the Neurodata Without Borders, NWB is a data standard for neurophysiology. It's an open source data standard, for which is important to say. It provides neuroscientists with a common standard to share, archive, use, and eventually build tools around the data that's stored in the cloud. So NWB allows you to store multimodal data within the same file. from recordings of extracellular and intracellular electrophysiology, optical physiology, behavioral data, sequence of stimulation of your recording sessions, trials structure, information about the data acquisition system that you have, like settings of your devices or sampling rates that you set up. And of course, very important, information about the experimental subjects, sex, genotype, age, weight, etc. Importantly, NWB also supports formal extension, which allows users to add new data types and modalities that are not initially covered by the core system. And all of that means that at the end of the day, the data and metadata related to a single experimental session will be packaged in a single NWB file, where hopefully you have, if not all, but as much data as possible to explain what happened in that recording session. Alessio, did you take my water away? Did you take my water away? Thank you. Yeah. Then the archive is a project funded by the Brain Institute, by the Brain Initiative, and is a public space for sharing neurophysiology data, which promotes collaboration within the neuroscience community. It's the standard public cloud storage system for NWB files. It allows neuroscientists first to store their neurophysiology data that's saved in NWB format, up to hundreds of terabytes for free. So that's free storage for you, lots of free storage. For each published data set, it creates unique digital object identifiers, which is also very relevant for provenance, and is a searchable archive, which means it promotes discoverability and reusability of data. Overall, we are trying to promote good science practices in an open way. This is just a quick shout out to the people working on these amazing projects, which are actually the pillars of other projects such as DENDRO and neuroscience, which we'll be talking about next. Right, so DENDRO is an open source web application that aims mainly at three things. First, facilitating the usage of complex neurodata processing algorithms by everyone. And what I mean by complex neurodata processing algorithms is literally everything. For the electrophysiology people here is like spike sorting, motion correction, automatic quality control, and yeah, what else you can think of. It aims through that to promote reusability of experimental data and also to promote reproducibility of results, providing full data processing provenance. We already have a beta version of it that has been online for a couple of months now. You're very welcome to try it out, complain if something doesn't look that good, or if you like new features. We are very open to new users, and we want to hear what people think of it and what will make it more usable for new users. And you can read about how to use it and learn more about it, including a step-to-step tutorial in our documentation. All right, so as I mentioned, DENDRO relies heavily on NWB as the standard data format and Dandy as the archiving place for NWB files. DENDRO then fetches raw data stored as NWB directly from Dandy, executes the data processing jobs. We can be anything from like filtering, removal of bad channels, anyway, any type of preprocessing or sorting algorithm or post-processing algorithm that you might imagine, that you might want to have running. And finally, when you have your produced data, you can save it directly back to the Dandy archive in the NWB format, so other people have access and can look at that as well. Nicely integrated with all of this is neuroscience. Neuroscience is a web application focused on visualization and analysis of remote neurophysiology data. Neuroscience is very useful here in this context because it allows you to quickly visualize data as, for example, in traces, rasters, trials, plus some simple combine analysis like the STHs or heat maps without having to install anything locally or to download entire data files. It all happens in the browser. Right, so which features in DENDRO we've been working on in order to solve the problems that we identified before? First, we created a no-code graphical user interface that operates in the browser, and you don't have to install anything, so you can run in your local laptop. It has a bring your own compute resource architecture. It allows users to install any apps they want, DENDRO apps, directly from GitHub repositories. It keeps track of full provenance of the produced data. It integrates very tightly with the DENDRO archive and with neuroscience. Let's go through each one of those points now. The main feature of DENDRO is, of course, its no-code graphical user interface, which allows users to run advanced data processing algorithms in remote large data sets without the need to install or download anything locally. But DENDRO also provides access to its API via a public endpoint, and that's for allowing for programmatic access to its services and to automatize tasks and eventually integrate with other external services. To facilitate now for the programmers to access this service programmatically, we also provide a Python API to interact with remote services. All right, so DENDRO has a bring your own compute resource architecture. The goal of this architecture is to allow labs to be flexible and vendor independent in terms of which computing resources they would like to use. And we make DENDRO apps in a way that they're agnostic to the type of compute resource services they are running on top. And this means that they can be deployed to different locations. They can be deployed to a local machine that you have in your lab, your laptop, a strong laptop, or a server. It can be deployed, of course, to bigger cloud services. We have successfully deployed DENDRO jobs to AWS, to DandyHub, and nothing stops us to expand it to other cloud services as well, Azure, Google Cloud, whatever. For labs that have access to HPC clusters, we have also successfully submitted jobs to Slurm clusters, so it works well there. And we plan for the near future to give access to submit jobs to Kubernetes clusters as well. Another important feature of DENDRO is its model for apps creation and distribution. We made it in a way that's very easy to wrap any Python code as a DENDRO app. In fact, it's easy to wrap any software as a DENDRO app, as long as you write a very thin Python wrapper around that will call the algorithm and will retrieve the results back. The code is shipped together with its dependencies. It goes in Docker containers. It enforces well-defined data models for the input and the output and the parameterization of the algorithms that you want to run. And apps can be installed directly by passing the URL of the GitHub repository. So it makes it very easy and decouples the algorithm writer's job from the end users. For the near future, we are planning to build a gallery of apps, which will be a convenient way for users to find data processing algorithms that suit their research questions. Because it relies on those well-established standards for data creation, storage, and distribution, and because it enforces good practices in software development, DENDRO is able to provide full provenance of the generated data. For every produced results file, DENDRO keeps track of the version of the source data, the version of the app that ran, the parameters of the job that were chosen, the logs that were produced by that algorithm, and the history of resources utilization, which might be relevant in many cases as well. As of now, the provenance that we generate is kept in the main server and can be, of course, accessed and exported as JSON files, including to be reused to trigger new jobs in a similar fashion. But we are planning eventually to include this full provenance data within the produced NWB file that goes to Dandy to be more in line with the philosophy of NWB. DENDRO, of course, integrates very tightly with the Dandy archive. Directly from DENDRO, you can search Dandy sets, you can list files and load data to be processed directly from the archive. And the results files produced by the processing jobs can be easily uploaded back to the archive to be accessed by other people. From DENDRO, then you can explore the source data and the produced data combined using NeuroSift. NeuroSift is a tool that we've been working on that provides you with a growing list of visualization widgets, traces, PSTHs, waveforms, heat maps, and it goes growing by demand. So if you use NeuroSift and you would like to see something, get in touch with us, open an issue, and we'll try to address it. It runs directly in the browser. Again, there's no need for installing anything locally. It accesses data directly from the archive and DENDRO, so you can combine source data with the produced data from DENDRO. It streams only the data that you're requiring for the specific view that you're trying to build. This means that there's no downloading of those huge data files. And a killer feature, in my opinion, is that the views are shareable through links. So if you assemble a specific view like that gets data from a specific source, and you want to form this PSTH with this specific time window and have the raster plots on top and want to look at these specific units, you can share exactly this view with collaborators. And the data for your collaborators will be streamed real time as well. You will not be sharing data, you'll just be sharing a reference. All right, so to recap, here's an overview of the ecosystem that we are proposing to solve or partially solve the problems and limitations in neurophysiology data processing that we observed in a slide back there. Researchers will use DENDRO to run complex algorithms directly from the UI, directly from the browser UI. DENDRO will read the source data and directly from Dandy and write the produced data back to the Dandy archive. DENDRO will run those algorithms available in remote code repositories. We'll run them directly on an array of diverse set of compute resources, different types of compute resources. Users can explore the neurophysiology data using the rich visualizations that are provided by NeuroSift, which has access to DENDRO and Dandy archive. Throughout of this experience, no programming skill will be required by the end users. No local installation of software will be required, and all interactions will be just happening directly through the visual interfaces in the browser. Those are the references for those projects that we've been talking about. I think it would be interesting to show how this platform looks like now for a couple of minutes, even 10 minutes. And I think we can also open for questions and make it interactive. If you guys have anything, would be interesting to do that. So, all right. So here I have, and that's how it looks like when you first arrive. You can already see a couple of things that you can do. You can import the data from Dandy. You can manage your projects. You can configure your compute resources. You can have access to the GitHub and the documentation. But here I like to give emphasis to the projects, which are the main organizational units within DENDRO. So a DENDRO project is a place where you're going to have a set of raw data that you're importing from.
There's a question online. Go
on. Okay. Okay, can I read and choose, or somebody will choose the questions?
No, you just go ahead when you're done.
Fine. Okay.
Go to the question.
All right, cool. Yeah. So in a project, it's a place where you organize a couple of data that you're importing. is the same place where you're going to store the data that you're producing from your jobs. It's also the place of collaboration. So the same project can be shared among different people. So you can see what other people are producing, compare with your results, so on and so forth. This is a couple of projects that I already created, but will be interesting to create a new one. Yeah, so I would just create something called new project again, because I'm not creative at all. Right, and here we are. So once we have a project, the first thing we would like to do is to associate this project with a compute resource. This is a compute resource that I already pre-set up, but this is a remote computer that is running somewhere else and will accept the jobs that I submit from here and will produce the data and send it back to the DENDRO service. I would like to select a different one. I would like to select this one that I named Edinburgh again, because I'm not very creative. And you see that in these compute resources, I have already installed a specific app, which is a spike interface pipeline app that runs Mountain Sort 5 spike sorting algorithm for me. Cool. So we have a compute resource. We have our place to work, which is our project. Now what we need is to import files, and we can import files directly from Dandy here. I'm gonna add a Dandy set to this project. I think this one is an interesting one. Yeah, that's the IBL brain-wide map. It's a very cool data set, lots of raw data to be explored here. Here I have one that I find particularly interesting that I run a couple of analyses already. It's this one that contains behavior plus electrophysiology raw traces recordings. I just come here, I import the selected assets, and voila, they're available for me here to run my jobs. If I select this file, you quickly see that because this is stored in NWB, we can quickly screen through it and see which types of data are available. So we can quickly identify that there is extracellular electrophysiology traces here, so we can run spike sorting algorithms. Here I have pre-installed this. It should be very easy to also install other spike sorting algorithms. But let's just click on this one so you see. And this is where the users are meant to interact a little bit more, because that's where you'll be able to choose things all the way from how many CPUs and GPUs would you like to use, how much memory, what's the maximum time that this thing should run before it gets killed. And here all the parameters that you might want to change in order to try different combinations for this full pipeline. So here's a full spike interface pipeline for those of you learning spike interface, and that will be present on tomorrow's workshop. Keep in mind that everything that you learn tomorrow is very useful. Please pay attention to that, but eventually you'll be able to do that in a no-code environment. Sorry, Elias. Yeah, but that's our goal, right? We want to make people aware of what they're doing, of course, but not necessarily working in a Python environment. Let them be free to use a nice interface like this. And I will not submit this job here right now because it will take a couple of hours. This is a long recording. And yeah, but I have the results of previous jobs, which I would like to share with you.
Luis, maybe you can show a little bit of the parameters that you can change.
Yeah,
I don't know if you were planning to.
I can show that. I think it was this guy here. Okay, so we have general high-level job keyword arguments, like the number of jobs you like to run. This is not really important here. In the recording context, maybe also not so much. You define if the data is going to be lazy, red, or not. What's the path of the electrical series inside of the file, because you might have several. So this is, for example, local field, and this is action potential. So that's the one we would like to run spike sorting on top. Yeah, so this is the pre-processing context. This is going to be a little bit messy here because of the resolution. But yeah, you can change stuff, for example, the high pass filter that you're using, if you want to detect bad channels and remove them or not, if you want to apply common reference, removal of noise, and etc. What else, Alessio, do you think?
Yeah, maybe all the spike sorting parameters are exposed, so these are all the.
Let me see if I can improve this a little bit. I'm sorry, I hate to use this mouse pad. For my computer is really bad. Yeah. Yeah, so here you can define a couple of parameters for your spike sorting algorithm. Those are particular to the mountain sort 5, of course. If you run kilo sort or spike circles or anything else, it's gonna look a little bit different. But this is where the magic happens. This is where you're gonna try and error and try to find the best combinations for your own data set. Anything else you'd like to see here?
Is there important spike interface?
Come again?
Are those like the doc strings over there in the last column to the right, are those directly from spike interface, or are they hard coded?
I'm sorry, Ramon, I don't understand what you asked.
If you open again the arguments for that sorter specifically, right, and like they correspond to spike interface sorters.
Not directly, there's something in between.
We made
That's the spike interface wrapper of the mountain.
But no,
What?
we actually these are like pedantic models for all the spike interface parameters.
You mean how we write the data models?
Yeah, so all these parameters are rendered from pedantic models that kind of build on top of the spike interface parameters and for the description. So yeah.
Does it answer your question?
Just quick question. So if you submit the job now and you've defined the compute resource, the data would be copied over to that resource, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay.
It will be streamed, actually, depending on the type of process you do. But like if you have like a big file, but you're only interested in processing a small chunk of
Right.
that.
And so does the system allow a situation where you don't actually have the data on Dundee, but maybe on your resource? So I'm thinking about the situation. I mean, it's almost, you're taking a detour through Dundee. So if we're talking about analyzing terabytes of data, the longest time will be actually spent copying the data over, right? That will take longer than any of the sorting. So is that a possibility, or is this kind of tied to Dundee?
Yeah, that's tied to Dandy. We've been writing this to promote the usage of Dandy. But yeah, I mean, this is a problem. What we've seen, for example, downloading data from Dandy, which is stored on S3 buckets, like in AWS storage service, is that if we run this in a compute resource, like an EC2 machine in AWS, the download speeds are just like massively huge, and you get to download hundreds of gigabytes in just a couple of minutes, which is actually a very short time period for the hours that's going to take for the. So it's not really that problematic. Yeah.
I had another question.
Yeah.
So here it looks like you're submitting one job for one recording session, basically. So in our case, we have 1,000. So we obviously don't want to do this 1,000 times by hand. Do you have a manner so that you can say, I have, let's say, a compute cluster where I could launch, I don't know, 10 jobs at a time to first have a queue so that you can manage those jobs and re-enter some and be able to make sure that you run the same parameters and so on a really large set of data. And,
we have a couple of, as of now, rudimentary ways to control how much resources are being used for determined destination. So it's kind of your own responsibility not to overwhelm your compute resource with too many jobs. You can set up like limits. This compute resource can only accept 2 or 3 simultaneous jobs, and all the rest will be queued and waited for the resources to be allocated and be reused. But the first part of your question is actually very interesting, and I encourage you to go to the repositories and maybe open this question to motivate like Jeremy and I to keep an eye on that, because we do recognize the importance of batch processing in two ways. First, running the same job in an n number of files simultaneously or like queued, like automatically you send job and then you forget about it, go see it next week. And running multiple jobs in the same file, but with different configurations of parameters, which might also be something interesting. And this is something that it's on our to-do list to start working in the near future. Is going to be, of course, necessary.
You can do it already with the Python REST API though, right?
Yeah, you can do it
Yeah.
programmatically. You can do it programmatically, that's for sure. But to do it in a nice UI fashion, it's something that you still need to figure out how to do, but the capability is already present.
Another question is, where is the data going on Dandy? Is it going to the same Dandy set? And is it going to a same file or a different file? Is it appended to a file?
Yeah, as of now, because we're producing small, like sorted unit files, just a couple of megabytes, we are storing them in Flatiron S3 buckets, but it's a model of operation that we have to change as the number of users grow. And this is going to be like temporary, and then users will be able to select what's going to be the target that they're going to upload to. They can upload to the same dataset if they own the dataset, but if you're analyzing someone else's dataset, you wouldn't like to upload that. You can upload to your own. To one dataset that you own, that you have permission to.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you're writing to our bucket or not.
Yeah, we like to avoid that. So you can read, but not write. Right.
Question of the total discussion. Because what you did, Jeremy, is very amazing. But here, the first claim is that, so in short, all the infrastructure too is really that it's amazing. But then on top of this, you build this GUI, this user interface, with the claims that for an experimentalist, it's too complicated to make a script. And then let's make a GUI. And it's more easy to remember a complicated pathway to click and sub-click in a submenu. And I think my claim is exactly the opposite. It's more simple to have a script, but even for an experimentalist, it's my claim. So maybe it could be, it's the part of the discussion. So I think
if you're right, yeah, I'm sorry.
For an experimentalist, I'm a developer, so maybe I'm totally biased. It's more easy.
You are totally
to
biased.
Start from a script and modify a script at the good places. So in short, the parameters, the way, how many jobs, blah, blah, because it's a script, it's linear. It's one file, it's unique. There's nothing to remember.
Yeah, you are
Everything is
underestimating
written
the number of changes that you might have to do in your custom script to always adapt to new questions that those people might have. You're starting from the point that you have to write a custom script for
No,
this.
not write, modify. In short, I have some script. I have a collection of scripts that answer my question. And here you have to answer the same number of questions to write the same number of app. And this could be answered by, for this, you have the script. For this, you have the script. For this, the script. And finally, what you did is in between. You try to shoot on the courses of tomorrow, so you try to do the reverse, but maybe you could have answered the same stuff with a collection of scripts well documented.
It's an ever-growing, never-ending collection of scripts. But look,
no, it's just to open
the GUI cannot do everything at once because it's limited by the visual navigation. And we do give access to the REST API for programmatic access. There is a great value in the architecture of the project, which decouples how the algorithms are written and stored, like in remote repositories, but standardized in a specific way. From the compute resources, which are also standardized on how they are requested and how they run, and the type of things that they keep track on for provenance. Just like the overall keeping track of all this useful information for the data that we'll produce at the end of the day, it's something that you can only achieve if you have some approach like that, right? Because on your custom script approach, you will end up saving, maybe you'll save all the steps that are important to reproduce that, but then you need your specific script distributed by everyone to reproduce that. And how can I find that script now? I
It's-
saw your paper, maybe I have to go there. But it's much easier, to have a gallery of apps where you can just navigate and find them. This is a idealistic goal, but those are the
Well,
steps towards that.
What if you haven't committed your change?
No, but it's the same, right? You publish a collection of app, which is more or less publishing a collection of script on GitHub and tag them. No, but it's just to, it was just.
To
some
be
kind of comment.
it's to be the advocate step.
I prefer to
Sorry.
work on my Python scripts as well, but
Yeah.
most users don't.
Yeah, but this is the first step of the developing this, but I'm not sure that most users don't want to script. I'm not sure of this.
Hmm. How many people use Neo and Spike interface, and what's the percentage of them that are programmers or non-programmers?
There's not questions of time.
Okay,
The first one you answered. Yeah, if you read those.
yeah. Is the DENDRO backend using Spike interface for processing? Regarding neuroscience, how close it is to sorting view, please? Okay. DENDRO backend, yeah. So the DENDRO apps, the ones that we produce so far, they are Spike interface pipelines. Yeah, but you can actually do anything. It doesn't need to be Spike interface. This is a platform that's not meant to run only electrophysiology. Eventually, we want to bring behavioral tracking, video processing data as well. Actually, that would be our next step. The next projects like queuing up or this type of stuff that we want to do that requires like heavy GPU processing. The next question is, can you use NWB files stored on a local machine instead of Dandy? I think we can. I think Jeremy does that sometimes, but that's not the type of practice that we want to encourage. We want to encourage people to share the data online, and therefore, I mean, this is to be a strength for Dandy. We want to promote NWB and Dandy.
Yeah, another thing that I think Luis did mention is that you can upload NWB files on Dandy in embargo mode. So you need to convert them to NWB. You can upload it there, and then you hold basically possession of the data for 2 years, I think, and then you can decide when to make it public. So that's the, let's say, suggested workflow. You convert to NWB, upload to Dandy in embargo mode, use all these tools to process and visualize the data. Once you're happy with the results, you publish it.
Yes, exactly. Well pointed. Okay, thanks a lot.
Bravo.
Luis, I actually have a question. Can you show a little bit of neuroscience?
Yes,
Because you
of
also
course.
only had a couple of slides. I think it's cool.
Of course. I mean, neuroscience is
I see it open up
even
there.
yeah. So,
I think somebody asked how much it looks like.
Sorting view, yeah,
Right.
how close it is to sorting view? I don't know.
similar.
It's
But,
similar.
Sorting view is like targeted to spike sorting, visualization and curation. So for example, you don't have any behavior in it. Normally, you just have waveforms and amplitude plots, correlograms. Neuroshift is more like NWB
Overarching
viewer. Yeah.
NWB exploration. Yeah. So that's neuroscience. That's our overarching NWB, remote NWB data exploration and visualization. Yeah, sorry. So it all starts here. All we're doing, let me start from here, actually. I have this project. The tutorial project, where I imported that same file as before from Dandy. That's the origin of my role traces and trials and behavioral recordings and metadata and all of that. And this is the result of my spike sorting job. Okay, and I can combine them in the same visualization in neuroscience. I just select both of them, and what we'll have is like a combined NWB file at the end of the day, which we can use to produce cool stuff such as PSTH, for example. Now, what I'm gonna do here is to go to my processing interface, which has, for example, let's look at the average waveforms. This is super cool. Yeah, so here we have all those units, and we can see their average waveforms across different channels. I'm gonna select two that I know look good. With those guys here. Like this is cool already, but what I really want to show is that we can get these units that were sorted, like post-processed, and combine that with the intervals from your original data. And then you can see what's the resulting PSTH for those units. Here again, I'm going to select a couple of units that have good responses. I think it's maybe those two. This one's not so good. This one's not so good. This one. Which ones are good? Let me see here. 41. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but yeah. So you can see those analyses, they are generated real time. Okay, this data is being streamed directly from Dandy and from DENDRO storage, and you are just visualizing what you just produced. And literally anyone can access this now because I can share this view. I just have to share this link here with you guys, and you'll be able to access this combination. Anything else I think would be interesting to see here?
I think that's so. I mean, you could also scroll through the raw traces in your Neuroscience. It could be a bit slower, of course, but yeah, basically it's a real-time streamer.
Yeah,
Dandy.
you mean the
Maybe do the LFPs so they're smaller.
Okay, let's do that.
I think you might need to zoom in.
Yeah, of course, it takes a little bit of time because we're streaming data real time. We're just fetching the specific data chunks that we like to visualize. And maybe this is requesting to view all the channels at the same time, and maybe that's why it's taking a little bit longer.
Yeah, it might also be due to the internet connection. But yeah, that was basically the just to show how interactive it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say
Not a
that's
good idea.
yeah, sorry, I tried. Let's give Luis another round of applause. Thanks, Luis. All right, so this is the end of today's workshop. Again, tomorrow we're gonna have